Welcome to the Driveway Beers Podcast with Mike and Alex. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share on any platform that you're listening on. All right, welcome back to another episode. We appreciate you coming back as always. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. The likes and the shares really do help us out, irregardless of which platform you're on. Shoot, even if you want to give us a 1-star review like Benny did a few months ago, that works too. Want to thank AnnapolisHomeExperts.com, which is Brian Schilling with Long & Foster Real Estate out of Annapolis. If you are looking for a home, looking to sell, looking to buy, Brian should be your first call. He was my real estate agent, helped me through a tough buying market about 10 years ago when we were competing. Basically, houses weren't even staying on the market for a week. He was able to get us into a home to take a look at it the day before it went on the market. We were able to put in an offer the day before that was fair and reasonable. The owners took it, and we were able to buy the house. They accepted our offer before the house even went on the market officially. With a guy like Brian, you're going to get benefits like that because he knows the real estate market inside and out, rather than going with someone inexperienced that might not have that edge that he does. And we want to thank Cheers and Spirits in the Arnold Station Plaza. Of course, we are drinking the Bib and Tucker. I got to look at the exact one we're drinking, but I bought it from Cheers and Spirits, and this is the small batch bourbon whiskey from Bib and Tucker, aged 6 years, 92 proof, 46% alcohol by volume. This is batch number 29, and it is bottle number, I need to remove the glasses to read it, bottle number, it looks like 53,866, but I don't think that's right. I think there's something else on this bottle that I can't see.
Here, so maybe I can read it.
There's like something over between the 5 and the 3.
Let me see.
Maybe it was the location of the bottle, or
oh, that is small.
Right? See,
it doesn't help that there's a.
It's like a reflection.
Yeah, it's weird. It's.
Do they really need to know the bottle number? They're not going to go hunt for that bottle number.
This could be a valuable bottle. 53,866.
If it is, we got to stop drinking it. It's more than half gone at this point.
Yeah, sorry. Right. There's probably some nerd out there like, you have a 53,000 series bottle and you're drinking it, idiots.
Right.
So, whatever. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is 53,000. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe that is small batch. I don't know. I don't know what small batch is.
Batch 29. Maybe it's the bottle overall.
Maybe.
You know?
I'll probably keep the bottle.
The bottle's cool looking.
I just kicked an Old Forester 86. Mm-hmm. I'm not keeping that bottle. Screw top.
Yeah. No screw top.
That can go in the garbage.
Yeah. Into the recycling bin.
So if you hear the cling clang of the ice, I am drinking it on the rocks. Mike is drinking it neat because he's more of a man than I am.
Yeah.
An interesting topic in the Supreme Court. We normally don't do Supreme Court episodes, and we probably will veer off of this topic. But essentially, I want to say a year or two ago, I want to say it's probably closer to 2 years ago, the state of Florida and the state of Texas essentially made it so that social media companies could not censor you on their platform. I think you'd have to be a resident of those states, but they were supposedly not allowed to censor residents of either Florida or Texas based on the law that they put in place. Although I think a lot of that was staged just because it's been going through the courts ever since then. And it's gone through Court of Appeals, state Supreme Courts, and I believe as of the recording of this, which is October 4th, this 2023, the Supreme Court has decided to take the challenges of both of those laws, and they're going to combine it into one hearing with the Supreme Court. And kind of a preview of that, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has kind of written an essay saying how social media companies enjoy the protections of Section 203?
230.
230, sorry, got my numbers mixed up. Section 230 of the Federal Code, essentially saying that social media companies cannot be sued for what they have on their platforms because they're not publishers, which is it's directly opposite of what newspapers are allowed to do, because newspapers are publishers and they decide what goes on their pages. Someone can sue them for misinformation, for libelous statements, slander, right? They can't just print whatever because they want to. Well, ever since the Twitter files came out, we have seen that Twitter or X at this point, they were being coerced into taking down posts or basically not putting them front and center. You could push them down further on the list.
Yeah, there's the shadow bans and the essentially like just de-emphasizing, and that's not the word.
Right.
It's not demonetized, even though they do that too. But
they push it so people can't see it, so they can effectively they can shadow ban your post without you even knowing it. So by them controlling what is seen on their platform, the argument is going to be that they don't deserve the protections that Section 230 provides them because they are acting like a publisher and they're deciding what's being seen on their quote-unquote pages. So that is going to go to court, and I would assume that either the tech companies are going to lose that Section 230 protection, or it's going to be decided by the Supreme Court that these social media companies cannot censor anything on their pages. They can't deplatform you. They can't make it so people can't see it on purpose via an algorithm. They can't. They basically can't do any of the shenanigans they had been doing. Now, these are billionaires upon billionaires that these laws are fighting against. But on top of that, they're also fighting against the federal government that was in communications with these social media companies to do these things. I think if you asked the heads of those social media companies, they never wanted to get in that business to begin with. But after years of being established companies, they got what some people call the deep state embedded in those companies, and they wanted to control the media narrative.
Well, I think you've also got a lot of younger staffers that are coming out, and they're going to these colleges and universities, and they're getting, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but kind of indoctrinated into a certain line of thinking. So those people are willing to play ball because they think that they're doing what's right and should be done. So they're definitely in the headspace that they're doing, the Lord's work by banning this stuff or, kicking it off or whatever it is that they're doing. Because they went to the same, essentially, thought factories that all the other ones did. And Dennis Prager said, if you saw, if you were alive in 1938 and you had the chance to kill Adolf Hitler, would you do it? And everyone was like, oh, absolutely they do it. Well, these people think that Donald Trump is the same as Adolf Hitler. And I would disagree with that. But there are others out there that really, truly believe that he is the worst thing since Hitler. I mean, how quickly are they willing to throw out Nazi this and Nazi that?
Everything's fascism.
Yeah. So,
well, even like John Cusack and Mark Ruffalo, fairly big name liberals, they're throwing out words like fascism and Nazi.
Right.
It's like, I guarantee you, John Cusack doesn't know what the word fascism is.
No, none of them do. And the thing is, meanwhile, Joe Biden's busting the railroad union strike busting, which is like the government busting up, is like that's actual fascist stuff. But
she's trying to repair his image now by going on a walk with the UAW workers.
like, stop. I look at that. I'm like, just stop.
Yeah.
So
you busted a union shop strike over 4 sick days.
Yeah.
And now you're going to try and re-ingratiate yourself with the union community by walking with UAW?
Yeah. And see, that's the kind of Democrat that my dad was, that I was, like an old school union Democrat. I'm a union worker now, and to me, it's I saw that, I was like, what do you like? You guys were the party of the of the unions, and now you're busting up a strike busting. Like,
UAW has more voters. Maybe that's why he's walking with them and saying screw the rail workers.
But the rail workers, I mean, their working conditions, and no thanks to the strike busting Joe, were awful. Like, they couldn't take a day off.
That's what that entire strike was over,
Yeah.
by the way. They wanted 4 sick days.
Yeah.
Now, people are like, whoa, they were willing to give it to him as vacation days. Okay, the reason why they wanted sick days was because if you have them as vacation days, you can put in for time off, and then they're granted by seniority. All right? So let's say I wake up and I got either strep throat or I need an antibiotic, and you can't get one without going to see a doctor.
Yeah.
So me as the rail worker, if I put in for a vacation day to go see a doctor of all things, and there's not enough workers, they tell me I can't take the day off.
Yeah, the day can be denied.
Right. But I got to go see a doctor. Or let's say I break my arm or something. Or you have a heart attack, for crying out loud. They literally won't let you take the day off because you're not the most senior guy. That's what they wanted 4 days where they could just take off. Now, would some of them use it for non-sick days? Sure. But this was also during COVID, the rail companies, owned by Warren Buffett, of course, for the most part, they had already trimmed a lot of workers. So the ones that were left were just getting worked to the bone.
Yeah.
And that's why they wanted the sick days.
And why would we want our trains to be crewed by a well-rested, healthy crew?
Well, that seems to be working.
Wasn't there a crash in Ohio?
East Palestine, Ohio, that no one talks about anymore, and it just dumped a lot of chemicals all over the place? Didn't happen. Not at all. Like, I don't understand this. Like, the railroads used to be the robber barons of the society. Democrats were against that.
Yeah.
They were for the rail workers. They were for environmental controls. Here's one of the worst environmental disasters that came from a train. Mm-hmm. And it just got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
And unreal.
And I don't know if the official cause of that ever came out of, whether the rail, like whether it was a track problem or equipment problem, whatever it was. It could have been a fatigued crew, And it's funny, I saw a social media post the other day. It's this group I follow. It's like airports and airline passengers or something. And this lady posts, pilots unions are the worst thing to ever happen. There, I said it. And it's like, so you don't want your pilots to be well rested?
Right.
A lot of that stuff that's in there is because it came through contract. Like, some of it was, I want the captain of my flight to be able to say, hey, the weather's not safe, we're not flying. And prior to that, the airline could say, no, you are flying, and if you don't fly, you're fired. So I want the actual person that's responsible for that aircraft to be able to make the decision whether it's safe to fly or not. Not some corporate, some guy in a dispatch center who just wants to make sure that airplane can get to its next destination because that's a more profitable flight.
Yeah, and they're definitely overworking pilots right now because there aren't enough to fly the flights. That's why anyone who's been on a flight knows that almost every single flight is full. It's jam-packed right now. Mm-hmm. That's why prices are through the roof. The airline companies have actually unmothballed their large jets, and they're starting to fly them not just on the international flights. Some of them are flying on long-range domestic flights too. Mm-hmm. For example, the Boeing A380, which is the huge double-decker.
Oh, the Airbus A380. Yep.
What did I say? Boeing?
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. The Airbus A380, big plane. It's a huge double-decker plane, passenger plane. A lot of the Arab companies fly. It's like Emirates. What's the?
There's Emirates,
Qatar.
There's Emirates, Qatar, and it's Etihad.
Etihad, that's the one. So Etihad used to have a huge fleet of A380s,
mm-hmm.
and they had mothballed the planes right during COVID, basically. So coming out of COVID, when there was huge demand for flights, they had to bring them back into service. So they did the maintenance, they brought them back into service, and now they're thinking, because they don't have the pilots to man all the short haul flights, they want to use the A380 or other wide body aircraft to do shorter flights because mm-hmm. there's so many people. They can sell the tickets.
Yeah.
The problem is that the wings, I believe, and the landing gear aren't made for that many takeoffs and landings.
Yeah,
they're not as durable.
Yeah, there's big jets there. So you've got flight hours and then you've got cycles. So a 737 or an A320, smaller, I'm sure everyone's been on one. If you're not an airplane person and you've flown from like DC to Miami, you've been on either a 737 or an A320 series aircraft.
Anyone on a Southwest flight?
Yeah, 737. They're a single type. Yeah, they're a single type operator. So you've been on one of these airplanes, and they're single. They're narrow body, single aisle, but they're made for a lot of cycles. And a cycle is a takeoff and a landing. So you might have a jet that doesn't have as many hours on the airframe, but has a ton of cycles. So Hawaiian was one of those airlines that their 737s had a ton of cycles because people would fly from like the big island to one of the small islands. It's not a long flight. It has like no hours on it, but it's got a bunch of cycles. There's actually a crash where metal fatigue the crew was able to land the airplane, but pretty much a third of the fuselage, the roof ripped off of it.
Jeez.
And from the cycles, you have pressurization, depressurization. So it's going up and down, and then impact on the landing. So all that stuff's getting a lot of wear and tear, where the big A380, because it's flying 14-hour flights to Sydney from Los Angeles, that 14-hour flight includes one cycle, where the 737 that flies 14 one-hour flights has 14 cycles. So, yeah, they're not made for that kind of,
So Airbus and Boeing are now thinking about beefing up landing gear for more cycles on big aircraft because the demand's so high. But in the meantime, they're just taxing the poo out of their pilots.
Yeah. Well, and then when you start doing that, you're also looking at so say you want to compress a whole bunch of small flights into one. So you're going to use no American carriers fly the A380. But let's just say United had one, and they wanted to fly one to compress. They wanted to do Kennedy to Tampa because that's a big, high-intensity route. So they're using the A380. They're also going to go, you don't need suites for a 2-hour flight. No one's going to pay that kind of money to have a first-class suite like you would on a 14-hour flight. Right. So they're going to switch to a high-density configuration. So now you're adding more passengers, more baggage, which, of course, in the end, the airplane doesn't care how many people are on board. The airplane cares how much it weighs. Right. So now so the Asian carriers will use an A380 in a high-density configuration, but they've been using them on shorter-haul flights forever because there's just so many people that are going to so many different places that travel by air is the only way to do it. You can't drive from one island in in Malaysia to another one. You have to fly. If they have 400 people per flight, they're going to use a high density A380.
That's what we need. The boat car, so you can drive.
Build a bridge.
Do one of those. Was it the duck tours?
Yeah.
Take your duck boat.
Or what was it? The V up the they call it the Schwimmwagen.
We're just coming up with solutions over here to the problem. We don't need pilots. We need Schwimmwagens.
Yeah. But the pilots unions are the people that are kind of fighting because they have duty time limits, and the FAA is involved too. But I remember flying back from Europe once. It was a super long delay, and essentially, if we hadn't taken off within the hour, we would have to turn around and go back to the gate for a new crew because they would be exceeding their duty time.
Yeah,
they would be okay for the takeoff, but they'd be not okay for the landing.
Right.
So, without that union working in conjunction with the FAA, that regulation, and now you have a pilot who's been up for 23 hours landing your airplane. I don't know. I mean, I've driven after being awake for 23 hours, and it gets sketchy.
You know what they're going to say. Mike, everything's on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's fine, dude.
Right.
It's fine. Yeah, until you got to land the damn thing.
Yeah. Now, Asian carriers use what they call cruise pilots. And cruise pilots are essentially, so your senior crew, your captain, first officer, take off, get to altitude, and then they go in the back and go to sleep.
Yeah, they have rooms for them.
Yeah, and the cruise pilot takes over. The cruise pilot, all they're doing is, if something goes wrong, they go wake up the real guy.
Right.
But if something goes wrong like that, well, now what do you do?
Well,
now
you send one of the guys to go get the other guys.
Yeah.
And then the other guy shit his pants.
Right. So there have been incidents where a cruise pilot screws something up, and they wake up the actual pilot too late. And by the time he rubs the fog out of his eyes and figures out what's going on, they're in the drink.
He's dead.
Yeah. So,
Next guy to wake up.
Yeah.
Basically, wonder if that's what happened to the Malaysian flight. Remember the one they could never find?
That was aliens.
Probably. Space lasers shot it down.
One of them.
Space lasers from an alien ship shot it down.
Who knows?
Possibly. It's possible because we don't know what happened. So aliens.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Factual podcast. All we do is facts. All we do is facts. We started this off by talking about Section 230, though.
Yeah. So
one of the issues that's kind of come up, and it was, I don't want to say it was surprising. So liberals will have you believe that only the evil conservatives were having this issue because they were saying inflammatory, negative falsehoods and misinformation and disinformation and all the gullibles out there, and they deserve to be censored.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can't have that. Can't have that. The people would, they fall for anything. How can we let them put out their disinformation?
Yeah, the mouth breathers.
They'll believe it. Of all things, they won't believe us. They're gonna believe them.
Yeah.
Stupid Trumpies. Oh my God. Okay. So it's fine when that happened to them. But what's that old saying? And I'm probably gonna misquote this, but basically, it's fine when they did it to them, it was fine. When they did it to them, it was fine. Then they came for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, except now, they can't come for you if you label you as right-wing.
Mm-hmm.
So, former liberal strongholds, Jimmy Dore, is now right-wing.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, right-wing.
Bill Maher is right-wing.
Bill Maher, in the last year, has become right-wing.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
After 70 years, he's just magically right-wing.
Yeah.
Russell Brand, as left as it gets, social medicine himself, socialism, no poverty.
He was a rock star, a drug addict, everything they like.
Everything. Now, for the last year or so, has been labeled right wing.
Yeah.
And YouTube finally demonetized Russell Brand.
Well, that was after they had a whole bunch of people come through and say that
Yes.
Yeah, that he raped them.
Oh, well, yeah.
So there was one. It's so they do this in the headlines, and I'm paraphrasing and stealing a lot of this from Dave Smith, from his Part of the Problem podcast. But essentially, they say, allegations come forth that Russell Brand sexually assaulted, or several women claim that Russell Brand raped them and was controlling. So the analogy they came up, kind of said was like, that's like me saying you murdered somebody and you failed to use your turn signal when you turned. So you might have 30 people that say that you failed to use your turn signal when you turned, and there might be some stretched out kind of maybe you killed somebody, but we're not sure. The problem is that but they just instantly pull the plug on it, demonetized, based upon the allegation alone. So, and I'm sure Russell Brand wasn't a saint. I mean, he's an admitted former drug addict. Right.
When he said he's not a saint.
Yeah.
You can't call, you call a bumblebee in a derogatory way, and they admit that they're the bumblebee. But he's like, yes, I had consensual sex with this woman.
Yeah.
As a guy with 2 daughters, I will always believe my daughters if something like this happens.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, there was a case that went to discovery lately, and Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, I was just about to bring it up.
Yep. So Trevor Bauer was a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and allegations came out that he, I believe, raped and abused a woman. And so the Dodgers said they did their due diligence, and they basically let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And no other team would pick him up because he's toxic at this point, right? So I want to say it's been, almost 2 years? Well, she was trying to get money out of him, and he said no. He stood his ground, paid all the legal fees for his own defense, and it finally went to court. Well, once you go to court, there's something called discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, the accuser had to hand over their phone and their phone records, or I believe they got it from the carrier that you have. In discovery, everything becomes available. If they can ask for anything they want, and you have to produce it. It doesn't even have to pertain to the case. And they got her text messages. And the text messages were basically between her and her friend before she even met him. Basically saying, I'm going to go after him. He's worth $51 million.
Yeah.
And then they found a video on her phone that she took of herself. And the video is of both of them laying in bed together. And she kind of pans over to him and then back to her. And she kind of winks at the camera with this sly smile on her face.
Yeah.
Well, that was the day she said that she had been beaten the night before.
Yeah.
Except now, in this video, the day after supposedly this happened, she had no bruises on her face like she said she did. Essentially, she fabricated all of it to get money.
Mm-hmm.
And she admitted as such even after that date. And the friends even saying, go get that money, girl. Go get that bag. And they're literally plotting it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, essentially, in discovery, it all comes out that she was full of shit. And he finally now gets to come out. And he showed the text messages. He showed the video from her phone. He got to keep all the discovery.
Oh, yeah. And he sued her. He sued her, too.
Well, so there were countersuits, but at the end of the day, he said they settled so that neither one were going to pay money in either direction. He just wanted his name back,
Yeah.
basically.
And he said, because I watched the whole video, and he said that he spent more money in legal fees than she will ever make in her entire life.
Yeah.
And he's fine with it because he's vindicated.
Right.
And that's what the problem I have with this knee-jerk reaction to just someone comes and makes an allegation, and when you make an allegation as strong as rape, I mean, if someone raped one of my children, I'd murder them. I'm gonna say it right here, that's the next logic, and I'll spend the rest of my life in jail happy.
Right.
Well, what do you hear? Someone raped my kid and I murdered them. All right, dog, you good? Right. You know what I mean? That's. I don't think there's any dad here that would think any different. So it's such a strong thing to just go and flippantly put out there, and then when you have and you can't see my air quotes, journalists saying this with no verification, nothing. They just put it out there, and now Russell Brand has plenty of money. It's not like he's going to be hurting. Like, he's not going to be on the street because YouTube demonetized. He's probably going to explode on other platforms.
Right.
I always watch him on Rumble, so I haven't watched one, but he's going to explode. Just like when they went after Joe Rogan, he exploded. Fox fired Tucker Carlson. He exploded on X. He's got more viewers now than he ever had on TV. So, it blows up in their face, but the fact remains that you have other people that haven't achieved escape velocity.
Right.
That's a serious. So those people have to toe the line.
Right. Shameless plug. You know who else is on Rumble? We are.
Yeah.
You could listen to us on Rumble.
Yeah.
That was horrible. I apologize. It's really there. I want to be sensitive to this, but there are some women that have weaponized Me Too, the Me Too movement, and they've used it for nefarious purposes. Unfortunately, though, it's come at the detriment of other women. Because there are probably some cases where some women are coming forward for something horrible that happened to them, and they're not going to be believed because this situation with Trevor Bauer has come out. Yeah, proving that there are women that do this. Well, if one woman does it, well, why don't the other ones do it too? Well, that's not always the case. Like, the Me Too movement wasn't supposed to be weaponizing the media against men. It was supposed to be bringing bad people to light.
Yeah, like Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah,
and others.
And who's the dude that just got convicted and sentenced to? He was in that set. Danny Masterson.
Oh, dude, that was creepy.
Yeah,
that's Scientology shit, and look, I don't want to die tomorrow. So if I get off the next week, Scientology did it. But that shit is creepy as hell, man. Like, have you seen Going Clear?
Is that with Leah Remini?
I think it's with her, or she did something.
Yeah,
I think it is her. But man, that shit's creepy as hell, man. That's almost like, it's like more powerful than the. I want to use FLDS. That's not right. The old school Mormon polygamous sex. Not all Mormons are polygamous. I'm not saying that, but there is a group that's very much in the devout old school Mormonism, right?
Because the Mormon, I think the Church of Latter-day Saints actually said no more polygamy.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm not saying Mormons. There is a group that calls themselves Mormons that follow that old rule and whatnot. And that's crazy too. But this is like, take that and multiply the coerciveness and power by 20. I mean, they control the crap out of people. And I
think they just get compromise on people, and
I don't doubt it.
There's always been rumors floating around that like John Travolta's gay, but it never comes out. Same with Tom Cruise,
right?
And they're both heavy, like big time into it. So, maybe they just get dirt on you and
maybe. But I mean, they have their hooks in some people, man. Like Leah Remini and like maybe two other. I mean, she was the most high profile one to come out of it, and somehow she's not dead. Like everyone else, the other minor players always seem to, disappear on a beach somewhere.
Like people that like used to work for the Clintons.
I didn't say that shit. I don't know what you're talking about, but I might know what you're talking about. No, because shit, man. We do this shit in a basement. We could easily disappear.
Yeah.
So if we do disappear, I'm not suicidal. I did not die of my own accord.
Yeah. I did not shoot myself in the back of the head twice.
Right. Right. Oh man, I don't own rope.
Right.
Right. So if rope happens to appear, it ain't mine. That's some crazy. Like that's why it's funny. Like the same people that believe that Scientology is like a cult and shit, or like the old school Mormons, like for what was that dude's name? Jeff. He went to jail. I can't remember the dude's name, but it was like the Mormon sect leader out in like Arizona or some shit. Went to jail. Like they'll believe that shit in a heartbeat. Oh, they're harming women. They're holding them hostage, but like they won't think like there might be some Scientology, like they won't believe like there's some deep state shit in the government too, like a different cult altogether. Right. With some weird ritualistic shit happening. And, oh, by the way, they just happen to run the world. That's too far-fetched.
But the thing is, like, Russell Brand was okay as long as he towed the establishment line. He goes against the establishment and take him down. And the thing is, I don't know, like, when you think of what happened to him when they went after Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, when they do these things, like they have so many followers, and people that are listening to Russell Brand and Joe Rogan are also listening to other podcasts and stuff that doesn't come from the mainstream media. If you just watch mainstream media, even if you just watch Fox News, you're only getting what the corporate media wants you to hear. So you go outside of it and, okay, so they just took down Russell Brand. Well, okay, I can listen to Dave Smith. I can listen to Joe Rogan. I can listen to Redacted. I can listen to all these sources who are all going to say like, hey, that's effed up.
Right.
But I think they're just they think so much of themselves that, we took care of him, But I think it's also a warning to all the other ones that they better knock it off too. Because,
it's weird though. It only seems to come from one side.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because like if you're on the conservative side of politics, they're not quick to take down another person on the conservative side of politics. They'll argue with them, say they don't disagree, and they move on. They don't try and deplatform that person.
Yeah.
It's only one side that seems to want to deplatform.
Yeah.
And I guess it's you could and the weird thing is you could even say that it was in Trump's own administration they did it. So it was technically a Republican administration, but the FBI and whoever else was involved was still doing it. So and that's why I tend to think, the president that you elect or that we elect may not matter if there's another faction that's really running things.
No, I don't think it matters at all. And I think that's the problem they had with Trump because he wasn't establishment. Mm-hmm. But the whole apparatus within government is still establishment. They were put in power by establishment. They become establishment. Their status quo is establishment. So he's making a bunch of noise, like, let's get rid of him. But in the other, the other vein of that with the administrative state, high ranking, maybe not appointees, but as close as you can get, they're all still there, regardless of who's in charge. I don't think it matters one at all who you vote for.
Right.
They've picked the candidates to represent their best interests. So, if you had, say, Romney, Obama, it really didn't matter to them which one won the election because they donate to both sides.
Right.
So they're hedging their bet. They're both going to do their bidding, and Obama dropped more bombs than anybody else, and they actually ran out of bombs to drop, which was great if you're Raytheon or Northrop Grumman, because now we have to buy more bombs to drop. So I don't think they don't care. Now, when you have an outlier, they would have done the same thing to Bernie Sanders had he won. They would have done the same thing to Tulsi Gabbard had she won.
Well, Bernie's already towing the line again.
Yeah. Well, I think they whipped him into shape.
They got to him.
Yeah. But, and I disagree with Ocasio-Cortez on just about all of her policy positions. However, when she came in, I was like, okay, she knocked off this establishment person who's been there forever, the gerontocracy. This is cool. Let's see what she does. And what did she do? She fell right in line. She was in a town hall arguing for war in Ukraine. I thought you were a socialist, super bartender, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that's bullshit. I think she went to Brown. We're not talking like, oh, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Like, you're not Jenny from the block. But to think that, okay, here's someone different, but what do? They fall right in line. The Democrats do it a lot better than the Republicans do. As you just saw with getting rid of McCarthy.
Yeah.
The hard right.
They don't seem to fall in line as much.
Yeah. So, when Ocasio-Cortez came in and kind of acted like all of them, I was like, okay, that's disappointing. So
she got elected as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but she probably has a prior life where she was Alejandra Ruiz, who went to Brown, and got that Ivy League education.
Yeah, and she's married to some simp white guy. Like,
did she actually marry him? I thought he was a boyfriend.
Dating, whatever. But you'd expect that someone who's going to come in like that is going to come in and actually do something different. Maybe caucus with pre-whipped into shape Bernie Sanders. Nope, they just toe the line. So,
yeah. And so, hopefully, with this Supreme Court ruling, which is essentially a ruling on Section 230, essentially a ruling on Section 230. And the reason why I say that is because let's say they uphold Section 230 as long as the social media companies, and that includes YouTube, do not censor. Basically, they're not dictating what goes on their platform. They're going to have to accept some really crappy viewpoints. Like, if you go on Gab, have you ever heard of that one?
No.
So Gab got popular when Twitter was getting rid of a lot of people. So I was curious. I created an account. Man, there's some shitty people on there. Like I hate black people. I hate Jews. I hate all this. Like, it was like the worst of the worst was there.
Mm-hmm.
But people were going there because they weren't being censored, right? And they kind of put up with that garbage so that they could have a place where they could still speak. Now, Democrats are finding this out with like Mastodon and the alt platforms suck.
Yeah,
they all do. Even the one Facebook created, which was what Threads. It was all the talk for like a month, and nobody went over there. There was no interaction, and so nobody's using it.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like some of these social media platforms are going to have to eat shit. Because once it opens the gates, these people are going to come on. Now, at the same time, I think YouTube will have a useful tool in their pocket because, yes, they might have to allow those views on the platform, but they don't have to monetize it, right? They don't have Section 230 doesn't say that they have to equally apply rules for monetization. You might get 3 strikes and you're out of monetization, but your videos can still be viewed, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't have a right to make a living off of YouTube, but you do have a right to post whatever you want onto YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think that's essentially what's going to come down, which most people, if they're not making money on YouTube, they're going to stop making YouTube videos.
Yeah. They'll go someplace else.
Or they're just that narcissistic.
Yeah. Or if they're not getting traction, if they're not getting a bunch of views. And I'm not sure where it falls in with like shadow bans and not pushing that content. Saying, oh, hey, this guy's like kind of an asshole. And, but the other thing is like, if someone's going to be on there spewing hate and vitriol, like, let them do it. Because to me, like, okay, now I know that guy's an asshole.
Right.
And I don't think that anyone is going to be like, I'm not going to watch that and watch some, racist, asshole talking about all this stuff, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, you know what? I think I'm a racist too, because this guy convinced me, like, no, this guy's a freaking clown, and everyone who's watching him and agreeing with him already agree with him prior. They just found someone who echoed their own sentiment.
Yeah, it was so like when we were in Florida one time. This was years ago. We were down in Orlando, and it's happened recently, but this happened when we were there. We're driving under an overpass, and there are these guys waving Nazi flags and all this stuff, and they're doing their Nazi thing, whatever they want. And my wife's like, "Oh, they shouldn't be allowed to do that." I said, "Most certainly they should be allowed to do that. I want people to see them."
Yeah.
Because the more people see them, the more they realize, 1, you can't ignore it. But 2, they speak against it. Or they mention how ridiculous those people are, or how they look, or what they're saying is stupid. Rather than if they don't see it and they don't hear it, then people don't think it exists. And you're not vigilant against it. You're not prepared against it. You just don't think it exists. It's like, oh, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
No, it does. And you can see them right there with your own eyes. Like, it wasn't like it was planned. We didn't know that was happening. We just happened to drive under an overpass, and these clowns were there. Well, and it happened recently again. And they're like, oh, well, if Florida allows this to happen, good. Allow it to happen so people can see how stupid and ridiculous it is.
Well, it's like when the ACLU defended the Nazis' right to march in, I think it was Skokie, Illinois. And it was like 12 Nazis showed up and 12,000 counter-protesters showed up. That having those assholes come out there and do that brought all those other people together against them. So people who would never realize that they were united in their united against this awful idea. So, but to pretend it doesn't exist, it most certainly does. It's never going to go away.
Nope.
There's always going to be some asshole out there that...
You're not going to control 1 billion people on this planet to all think the same.
Right.
We're not predispositioned that way. You're going to have some people that hate someone for the way that they look. And it probably stems from something that happened to them when they were younger.
Yeah.
Someone did them wrong, and now they hate everyone from that group.
Or they were just raised that way, not knowing any different because their parents raised them that way.
Right.
But look at the Waynesboro Baptist Church when they would come out and protest soldiers' funerals. And then what happened? All the vet motorcycle motorcycle groups would show up, and even some of the gangs would show up, and they'd sit there and they'd drown them out with their motorcycle engines. Those people so you showed that huge united cause against that awful message. And, the best defense, the best weapon against bad speech is good speech. bad ideas as good ideas. So, and I don't want to see neo-Nazis running around protesting, but it's their right to do so. But it's also our right to come out and protest against it.
Well, and I think there's also something to be said for if they're out there. Not that I want my girls to see it, but I want them to know there are people that are out there that don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be careful. It's not all, bubblegum and rainbows, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I'm going to drive them to a Nazi rally so they can see
right.
it. But
So
if they happen to see them, be like,
here's,
hey, look,
do these brass knuckles fit? Here you go.
Right, you remember that jujitsu you learned?
Yeah.
Well, be sure to choke one of them out.
Yeah.
Right? It's definitely... I feel like people who want to silence another group are afraid that the message will take hold against their message. Well, if you have a better argument, it's going to win out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to debate ideas because you don't feel like yours is going to win out. That's not how you win. It's kind of like when, like you talked about with counter-protesters. Counter-protesters over the last few years have taken more of a violent stance, and it's definitely the Antifa section.
Yep.
And all it's done is to make Antifa look like a militant group of assholes. Whereas, let's say there was a neo-Nazi rally in Illinois, and let's say you assume 1,000 are going to show up. Okay, well, you show up with 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is just line the route. Because then that 1,000 people, they see how many people are against them. That alone is enough to deter maybe one or two people from being in that group.
Yeah.
Like, oh wait, maybe we don't have, maybe this isn't the way to think. Or at the very least, it could push them back into hiding.
Mm-hmm.
The point being, when you go out there and you take 5,000 people and you try to beat up 1,000 people because they have those views, you then look like the animal.
Yeah.
Not them. They had their permit.
Mm-hmm.
They marched in the route that they were assigned to. Because in this country, you have to get permits. That's how they know where to counter-protest.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I agree with what they're doing. But what I'm saying is that if you go and you just stand along the route, don't say anything, don't move against them, just stand there with your numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You will do more of what you actually wanted to do than if you go and beat the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Because when you beat the shit out of them, you actually just did their recruiting for them.
Yeah. Now you're on the same level they are.
Right. Well, you all that shit that they were spewing, all the hate, all this, everything that they called you, you just proved them right.
Mm-hmm.
Which and other people are now seeing it because now you're on the news. You've proven them correct. You've recruited more people for them. So next time, instead of 1,000, maybe they got 2,000. Because they saw what you did on TV. That's what I'm saying. If you just go and you stand there and you silently protest. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. was one that said, the non-violence is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say don't show up.
Yeah.
But non-violence was the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks so much louder than violence, especially in those situations. Is pertains to silencing or censoring a group. In some ways, you're making that voice more interesting to others. It's like when you ban a book, more people want to read the book.
Yeah.
Well, if you're banning a voice, more people want to hear that voice because they want to see why you banned it. You're gaining their audience. So then they say, okay, well, you're off this platform altogether. Well, they're going to go somewhere else. And, for example, someone like a Steven Crowder, right? Demonetized on YouTube. I don't think he posts there anymore. And he still gets more interaction. Now, he doesn't get more views necessarily, but he gets more interaction on Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for him, doesn't hurt his advertising. Because he could still say he's getting more interactions. But anyway, my point being, you probably gave Steven Crowder more of an audience by demonetizing him on YouTube. Which is the complete opposite of what you wanted.
Yeah.
You could have let him stay in complete obscurity to most of the country if you just would have left him alone and not censored his speech. Plain and simple. Now, if he starts to gain more of an audience, you let him, because if his words are doing more to convince people than your words, well, maybe you don't have a great argument anymore. You know, it's kind of like, I mean, people just know that the Nazis were bad people and they caused the war, but they never study the reason why it became. And it was because it was a depressed people that needed hope.
Yeah.
Okay, well, people look for hope in some strange places. And they're going to look for it where you're telling them not to look. So, I don't know. I'll be interested to see what the Supreme Court says about this, though. I'll also be interested to see, even if it's a conservative vote, I'll be interested to see if it goes 6-3 along party lines, or if there's actually a little bit more sway one way or the other. Mm-hmm. I'll just be interested to see how it goes.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
No, not really. Just, I mean, I've always been against any sort of censorship at all, especially the type of state-directed stuff we kind of saw, earlier. And it's always funny when, 2-3 years ago, the lab leak theory would have gotten you banned off all the platforms. Now it's pretty much the accepted, reason of what happened.
That's creepy.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So, and anyone who's been around that sort of thing would be like, oh yeah, that was a lab leak. If you're really experienced with something, say you were the captain of an oil tanker and all of a sudden there was a whole bunch of oil that washed up on shore, you'd be like, oh, an oil tanker probably, oh no, that's not what happened. It was, it was a special whale that has oil in it and it threw up and that's where all the oil came from. And you say, no, I'm pretty sure it was an oil tanker that ran aground. Nope, you're banned, gone. But then 3 years later, yeah, it was probably an oil tanker. But what bothers me so much is that everyone just eats it up. Nobody questions it. They just like lemmings, like sheep, oh, okay. MSNBC told me, CNN told me, okay. How do these people have any credibility anymore? And that's another big issue where now the government has lost, the CDC come out and tell me just about anything, nah, I don't think so.
Well, especially now, I mean, you've got some, I think on YouTube he's called Chief Nerd or something like that. I don't know his actual name. But he was touted by the government as being an authority on COVID shots and whatnot. Well, now he's coming out and saying he's not going to get the booster.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says he has enough immunity from his prior jabs and he got COVID.
Yeah.
So he's got natural immunity too. 2 years ago, he got it. He's still saying he's got he's still got the immunity from it.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, when some scientists were talking about the COVID origins, Brett Weinstein in particular, he went on Joe Rogan and he talked about how there was no way this virus jumped from animals to humans in one jump like they said it did. Because that's not how viruses work.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be levels of mutation that occur in order for it to go from animal to human. And he was also, because he was talking about the Wuhan lab at the time, and this was when Wuhan lab talk got you thrown off.
Yeah. They call you racist for it.
Sure. And the late night shows were talking about how the Wuhan theory was a conspiracy, and All three of them, all those three major night. It was an. If you go back and look at it, what was said, it's unreal how coordinated that shit was.
So I used to watch Jimmy Fallon every night. I can't watch it anymore. It's just warmed over just nonsense jokes, and it's not funny. And then, but if you listen to, if you watch the three of them, they're all doing the same stuff. Like, where are you getting your marching orders from? And why is everyone okay with it? That's the really scary, is everyone's okay with it. They're all like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. And you talk to people, you think, just regular everyday folks, and they're fine with it. They still get the New York Times. I wouldn't believe anything the New York Times said.
I don't know how you can anymore.
Yeah. They've sacrificed their own credibility. So, that was the paper of record. The Gray Lady. I'm like, it's garbage. Washington Post. My dad read the Washington Post every day. I used to read it every day. I wouldn't pay. You could pay me to read it right now.
Yeah. And this pertains more to Pfizer than anything, but it kind of goes along with censorship in a little bit. You're already going to know one of these. Actually, I'll phrase it a little differently. Let's make it more of a fun game. How many countries in the world allow for direct marketing for pharmaceutical companies to consumers?
I think it's 2. It's us and New Zealand.
Correct. 2.
Yeah, but New Zealand, it's not the way it is here.
Right.
Here, they sell all kinds of stuff, and it's all like, it's almost like they're inventing conditions to sell you drugs.
So I occasionally watch live TV because I do like watching some football, as we all know.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
75% of the commercials are pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
Some of this shit is crazy. Like, have you ever experienced a tingling in your undersack? It could be atrial fibrillation.
Yeah.
Well, we have a cure for that called, or not a cure. We have a treatment for that called Reza.
Yeah.
And it's a once daily pill or a once monthly pill.
Yeah.
That you just happen to have to stay on for
forever.
the rest of your life. And it probably doesn't do shit. Because all of the studies that went to the FDA to get it approved were provided by Pfizer. There's no independent study of the drug.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I encourage anyone to watch something called Dope Sick. And I wish I could remember the other one with Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, I started watching it. I watched the Matthew Broderick one first. And then watched Dope Sick.
Oh, yeah. So you would go that way?
Dope Sick's so much better.
I agree. I like Dope Sick better.
Yeah.
It felt like a better...
I just thought it was a better show.
Story, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, there were probably some liberties taken, but
yeah,
the funny thing, you watch both of them, the story's basically the same.
Yeah, but I definitely watch the Broderick one first.
Yeah.
And I forget what it's called. Something about pain.
Painkiller?
Yes. But watch that one first, just because you're gonna. If you watch Dope Sick first, it's harder to get into the other one.
Yeah, you're right. It's not as well done.
Yeah.
Dope Sick was very well done, I thought. Both of them will piss you off equally, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Dope Sick makes the Sackler family look worse, which was hard to do after Dope Sick, because Dope Sick made him look plenty bad.
Yeah.
But after watching that, I don't know how anyone can trust the FDA ever again as far as new drugs that get approved being safe.
Mm-hmm.
Until other countries approve them, I don't know if I will ever trust another drug, a newer drug that's approved by the FDA. I don't know how anyone can.
Yeah.
It's a bought and paid for agency. It's funded by the industry. The people that are approving drugs leave and go work for the industry.
Yeah.
It's literally like the SEC is a highway from Goldman Sachs and back. It's literally the banking industry creating rules for the banking industry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the FDA is creating rules for the pharmaceutical industry. It's
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical industry creating rules for the pharmaceutical industry. It's unbelievable. It's just like agriculture creating rules for agriculture through the USDA.
And they all do it.
Right. But it's like you're approving drugs and then marketing them heavily to the United States, to the people in the United States. So they go to the doctor and say, hey, how come you're not prescribing me this drug? I have all these symptoms that they said in...
I have restless leg syndrome.
Yeah.
I need this new pill.
I bounce my leg all the time.
Yeah.
I need that pill. You should be prescribing me. And if you're not going to prescribe it to me, I'm going to go to another doctor.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get paid from the insurance company, doctor, because you lost another patient.
Yep.
It's unreal. And yes, I get it. It's a Hollywood production. And I could rail on Hollywood from Six Ways to Sunday. But they're telling you the truth in this one.
I'm surprised it actually. Well, I think because DuPont and the Sacklers were just so evil.
Well,
But
at that point, the Sacklers got sued in court. So everything was public record at that point. You know what I mean? A lot of times you don't get that information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they had all the records and they had the discovery and all that other shit. I mean, I don't know, man. I just don't understand how people can still believe the medical journals in this country that are owned by the industry.
yeah.
The American Medical Association is bought and paid for. What is the journal that they use? The American Medical.
So there's the New England Journal of Medicine.
That one. And what's the other one?
I forget. There's a pediatric one. There's like all the specialties have their own.
So look at who owns those publications. They're owned by people, companies in the industry. They're not independent.
Yeah.
They publish what they want, or they publish what they want you to see.
Yeah.
The fact that these government agencies that are set out to protect us, they're just doing the bidding of the industries that they're supposed to regulate.
Yeah.
And yet we're supposed to put this stuff in our bodies. And don't get me wrong, I took the jab. I got it.
Yeah, I got 3 of them.
I also, I got the regular and the 2 boosters.
Mm-hmm.
But now I know more than I did before. Or at least now know enough to be skeptical. And other people aren't.
Yeah. And then the reasons they were so against ivermectin and hydrochloroquine and all that, because if there's another treatment, they lose their emergency use authorization. So
Correct.
They had to shit on those other treatments continually, because if you're saying, well, no, ivermectin's effective, well, then all of a sudden there's no need to have an EUA for the experimental mRNA vaccine, which I think is even the other part is, and Russell Brand said this, is that, they made the taxpayers, the government gave them all kinds of money to develop this, and now they're taking all the profits from it. So, it's...
Right. Make that make sense for me.
Yeah.
We funded a private business's research into a new drug, and they're going to make massive profits off of us.
Yeah. And all that was started under Trump.
Well,
That Operation Warp Speed, all that was
that was well into that was
Yeah.
mRNA vaccines were already 20 years into the making at that point.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of you can adjust it as you go.
Yeah.
It's very adjustable. It's part of that CRISPR gene modification. CRISPR is spelled CRISPR. Look that shit up.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be amazing for cancer research, but, and there's always a but, nobody knows where that research has gone.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, if anything did come out, I don't know if I believe it. I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to believe that there's this huge nefarious intent from these organizations or from these government agencies. But I think someone making $70,000 or $80,000 a year gets $400,000 a year put in front of them, man, that shit's hard to say no to.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit, but that's how the system is set up.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, whoever those people are, they don't give two shits about you as a human being. I mean, think about this. Purdue and OxyContin knew OxyContin was addictive. Yet they went out of their way to get a bottle approved without a black box on it, and then pushed doctors to prescribe it to everyone and everyone. Mm-hmm. And everyone and anyone. Knowing it was addictive.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that when they increased the dosage of the pill, they got paid more for it.
Mm-hmm.
Not if you took 240s. No. They get more profit if they make 180.
Yeah. 180
milligram pill, right? And they did that. And then they did a 160 milligram pill. And they got paid more for that. There's more profit margin in it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give two shits about the addicts they created, knowing that they put out essentially what was heroin.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch Dope Sick and Painkiller, and if you're not pissed off by the end of it, then nobody can help you.
You maybe have a career in pharmaceutical sales.
Maybe you do.
Or regulatory agencies.
Right. And I'm not saying the low-level people, the salespeople, most of them probably don't know any of this shit. Mm-hmm. They're just there selling drugs because they think they're buying what they're being told in the literature, that the shit's good for people and all this other stuff. It's the people at the top and the people at the FDA that know that the data they're getting, the FDA people know the data they're getting is from the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, they just all bullshit.
They're not going to submit it if it's going to say their shit kills people.
Right.
What would be the point of submitting it? You know that shit's getting denied. They're going to, and they don't even have to submit all of the data. They basically submit something written in crayon saying it creates unicorn poop.
Yeah.
Or rainbow-colored poop. And the FDA just takes it as fact. So, needless to say, I get a little worked up. Want to thank Cheers of Spirits over the Arnold Station Plaza for providing the Bib and Tucker bourbon that I was drinking throughout this episode, which probably explains why I got a little excited toward the end. Also want to thank Brian Schilling with Long & Foster Real Estate at AnnapolisHomeExperts.com. Without them, this basement wouldn't exist. Well, it would exist, only we wouldn't be in it.
Right.
So the basement studio that we've created here exists because Brian helped us buy this home. And then 8 years after we bought it, we turned it into a studio. So if you need your basement studio, contact Brian Schilling at AnnapolisHomeExperts.com and get your podcasting basement studio up and running. Want to thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.